we have today's event. My name is Michelle Chen. I'm the co-founder and chair of Good Morning Silicon Valley Association. We are a nonprofit organization that support innovations and global cooperation in green economy. A big thanks to our friends and partners to make this possible. Thanks to JTRO to bring us NECX to be one of our panelists. And thanks to our partners, NIH Climate Impact Capital, and also Be Current Investment, Impact Investment to make this event possible. Now let's start our first panel. Let me introduce our moderator, Lawrence Yan, the founding partner of NIH Climate Impact Capital. I can't wait to hear his feedback about this week's Climate Week. Please join me in welcoming Lawrence.
Well, welcome everybody. First of all, full disclaimer, just take a look outside later on, right? It's beautiful, isn't it? Ideally, we wouldn't want to have this outside. Imagine watching over the Bay Bridge and the ferry building. But it's a little bit too chilly, so we don't want anyone catching fever, so we're just gonna move it inside and cram here for now, all right? But feel free to grab here outside later on if you want to. Now, thank you everyone for being here today with us. I'm Lawrence, and I am the founding partner of NIH Capital. Quick introduction to what I do, because they're actually more well known than I am, so I got 2 minutes for that. I manage a climate tech focused VC fund, and the fund is supported by family businesses and family offices from Taiwan. And what we do is we actively engage our networks and partners from Asia and try to support startups and innovation in climate and sustainability to build solutions cheaper, better, and faster. This being the key. So that's what I do. I work with a lot of talented people here, many of them are in the room today, and try to make sure that these solutions are here as soon as possible. Okay. And but it's so wonderful seeing all of you here with us this afternoon. By the way, today we're not talking about DeepSeek or AI. Are you guys aware of that? If you are, with apologies. When we decided on this topic, just a little bit on the context and background, we were a little bit, there are several instances where we were skeptical whether this topic would be valid today, right? Understanding how the whole world is talking about what is the possible death of globalization, the new world order. But certainly, by your turnout and enthusiasm, I think it's safe to say that climate tech in particular, I think global collaboration is more relevant and important than ever. Right? And a key message we want to deliver with all of our panelists and for the VC side and the founder side is, we know there are a lot of things happening around the world today. Right? There are a lot of moving pieces that could be hurdles to overcome for a lot of founders in different places. But there are ways to actually overcome that through global collaboration, right? By finding the right places, the right partners, they can actually help you grow in different parts of the world and the US. All right? So I think these are the contexts we want to try to provide, and hopefully through the panel today, with our friends from VCs and founders, we can share a pathway as to how collaborations with corporations in different places, different countries, different regions can help a product grow, scale, and we could build solutions, again, cheaper, better, and faster. Okay. So with that in mind, let me introduce our panelists very, very quickly. But before we do that, I want to do a little bit of a poll first, all right? So how many of you here have been to, say, Japan? Could you raise up a hand? Ooh, great. How many of you have been to Southeast Asian countries except Singapore? Singapore doesn't count as a Southeast Asian country. All right, great. And how many of you have been to, say, Taiwan or mainland China? Awesome. All right. So that's most of you. But how many of you have done businesses there? All right, about half, right? So hopefully what we have in store today is we have these VCs and founders who have done businesses in Asia, collaborated with major corporations from Asia, and hopefully their stories can be exhilarating for you, and you guys have takeaways and help your businesses, help your ventures or your portfolio as well. Okay, so let me have a quick introduction to the panel today. First of all, Xiao, he is a partner at Lower Carbon Capital. And then we have Andrew from New Energy Nexus, he's a Chief Growth Officer, and Ryoko with NECX. I'm going to hand the mic to Xiao to start, to introduce yourself, what you do, and then we'll hand it over to Andrew following.
Thank you for the introduction, Lawrence. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. Your time is really, really valuable. It's a privilege always to speak to groups like this. My name is Xiao. I'm a partner at Lower Carbon Capital. We love supporting ambitious founders at the early stage who are building something meaningful in climate. I am very lucky to be mentally ill in a very specific way, similar to how a lot of founders are mentally ill, and I just love working with people building big, ambitious things.
Thank you. Andrew?
All right. Hey everyone, Andrew Chang here, Chief Growth Officer for New Energy Nexus. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys, organizers. How are you guys feeling today? Can I get a pulse of the room? Good? Yeah, let's do it. So I'm currently based in Shanghai, but I grew up in the East Bay in Oakland, and so Bay Area native here. My work at New Energy Nexus, the world's leading ecosystems of funds, accelerators, and networks. We support early stage entrepreneurs that are pursuing the energy transition. Our mission is to drive innovation and build equity in the global clean energy economy. We operate in 12 countries, and we do a lot of work in Asia, Southeast Asia, China, and most recently also in the UAE. So we actually started a program out there as well. So a lot of international experience, and I hope to share some of that insights with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Ryoko?
Hi, thank you everyone for being here with us. My name is Ryoko. I'm from NECX, which is a venture studio, kind of incubator, accelerator based in Palo Alto. We are backed by, as the name says, we're backed by NEC Corporation, which is one of the largest IT companies in Japan. And NEC has a huge R&D network in US, Europe, Japan, and some other Asian countries, holding more than 1,000 researchers, and we have a lot of patents. And the objective NEC Corporation created NECX here in the Valley is that they wanted local entrepreneurs or US entrepreneurs use the technology developed in NEC, because there are a bunch of use cases outside of NEC, and we wanted to bring the technology out from the company to create new value to the society. Actually, NECX is sector agnostic, but we recruit applications from founders twice a year, basically, for our flagship program, and we receive more than about 1,000 applications a year, and we see more and more applications in sustainability, climate, agri-tech, marine tech, food tech, and so on. That's why I'm here, and I would like to share about what we've seen and what we work with Japan and other Asian countries.
Thank you, Ryoko. Round of applause? All right, great. So, like what I was talking about, the reason why we want to have this discussion today is, we understand the world is changing ever so quickly today. And there are a lot of moving pieces in all the ventures, businesses, portfolios, a lot of uncertainty. Things like government programs, contracts, and grants, things like permitting, things like Fortune 500 company bureaucracy and dragging their feet. I mean, these are things that we can't really control, right? But today, I think the stories we are able to share, we're trying to share, is examples of global collaborations where these partnerships can help companies grow outside of these restrictions and realms. I guess to add a bit of context to it, Xiao, he is working very closely with the Japanese and the Korean corporations, and he will understand how global innovation technologies are able to partner with these major corporations in Asia. Andrew, he's also underselling himself too, right? He has worked with projects across, say, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines. Also, he was in the Middle East, but that's not a part of today's conversation, of course. And Ryoko, of course, representing Japan. Japanese corporations being one of the best partners for a lot of innovations today in the US. They have done wonderful work incubating a lot of projects with collaboration with major corporations. So hopefully we can share stories on these partnerships as well. So Xiao, can I throw to you to start the first discussion, which is, can you tell us a bit about, your work with Asia, what these partners are looking for from Asia and how you see they could kind of support the innovations here in US?
I mean, unfortunately, I have to disagree with the premise a little bit. This is not the moment where I'm focused a lot on doing collaborations with Asia. Right now, so many of the technologies that we're looking at, they're classified as important for national security or defense or critical infrastructure, which makes any kind of collaboration with things outside of the United States very, very challenging, especially if you have a dual use angle or something that touches on DoD. As you scale, it's just more convenient to focus purely on the United States market or specific European partners in specific NATO countries. It's a tough ecosystem out here right now, and I think we have to be really realistic about what's actually possible. If you're an early stage founder right now, I'd be very, very cautious about spending any time thinking outside the United States.
To piggyback on that, right? What are the differences between the US companies and European companies that you're covering? Is it similar in Europe, where they are also kind of really focusing on their domestic economy, or are they kind of trying to take more businesses outside of Europe?
I mean, maybe to be purposefully a little bit inflammatory, like I don't think about Europe very much at all, right? Like the European ecosystem is incredibly weak at the moment, and they don't have a track record of creating very large, substantially profitable businesses in any point over the last 10, 15 years. And so if we're really going to build massive companies to really change things in global climate or energy, I'm a little bit suspect whether that's actually going to come out of the EU environment. Most of the teams that I support in Europe are exciting because I think the founders have a vision to potentially launch in interesting ways in Europe, but ultimately migrate to the United States or very intentionally take advantage of the United States capital markets. And if you don't have that skill set, it's very, very difficult for me to believe that there's a chance to build something large and substantial.
And on top of that, one more question will be, I know you work a lot with energy-related companies. And we do know a lot of sectors outside of energy are trying to find directions. Perhaps they're not getting as much support from the DOE and DODs. How are they changing their strategies under the current environment?
They're getting a lot of support from DoD and DOE, right? So first of all, I think we should be very, very cautious not to make over generalizations about what's happening, right? Startups are a power law game, which essentially means that the majority of them are bad. Venture capitalists are a power law game, which means the vast majority of VCs don't know what the fuck they're doing. Everything we see is a product of that dynamic. We have elections every 4 years in America. This has been true since 1776, right? Most of our portfolio was constructed during the first Trump administration. Nothing happening is actually that surprising. And so I think the people that are feeling like, oh my God, like everything's changing, there's something fundamentally wrong with the premise of how investments have been made in climate over the last decade, right? A lot of people say cheaper, faster, whatever, but like to actually do that means that you have to look for companies that are compelling to the people who don't give a shit about other people, who don't give a shit about the climate. These companies need to print cash. And if your company prints cash, you're going to do well no matter who sits in the White House, no matter who's the Chancellor of Germany, no matter what happens on the global landscape. And if you really care about making meaningful change in the global environment, well, that's the bar. And that has always been the bar to make this impact through the lens of venture capital.
Super interesting. I want to one last question for you. So for the company that's building in the US, is their supply chain strategy changing? Or is it pretty much on course with what they were planning on before as well?
We told most of our companies to stop building stuff with Chinese parts 4 years ago, right? Again, like none of this stuff should have been a surprise. And yes, things are going to be more expensive, but you better be profitable with good margin, being able to get yourself from Vietnam or Malaysia or even domestic supply chains, right? And building more supply chain resiliency generally is probably a good idea now, especially with crazy tariffs. and how you think about overall how you do sourcing. Of course, that is going to be evolved, but we just, to go back to my earlier point, we need to be very, very realistic about what the world looks like over the next decade.
That's amazing. We love the underground assessments from you. And well, Andrew, can I tap into you right now?
Yeah.
You've been all over Asia as well and the US. Could you tell us a bit more about your work at New Energy Nexus and the things you're promoting and how you're working around this entire landscape?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I appreciate the truth. You're absolutely right, Sean. This is an incredibly difficult environment, but this also, I think, is any challenge also creates opportunity for collaboration and opportunities in Asia. There is no doubt that what we're doing right now is incredibly important, especially in the Asia context. We've got China, obviously, we know is trailblazing in terms of clean energy. We need to find a way to work with them. Southeast Asia, Indonesia is massively growing middle class and population. There's a lot of innovation that's happening. I think right now we need to be in a period, no doubt it is difficult in the US, but we need to continue to push the narrative, building bridges, not walls. So I'll start with that. Now, going back to New Energy Nexus, we run programs, incubator and accelerator programs through 12 countries. We support about 1,500 startups to date, mobilized 84 million. Given out money of 84 million, which mobilized around $4.5 billion in total catalytic capital. So in the US, we provide non-dilutive capital to early stage entrepreneurs. We do have a fund out of Singapore that's focused on Southeast Asia, pre-seed to Series A, 30% concessionary, 70% commercial. It's a $100 million fund that's going to be focused on electric mobility, energy efficiency, electric maritime shipping. So that's our work sort of around the world. We're 145 staff. In addition to running these programs, we work a lot with ecosystem partners, not just the VCs, but also corporates. We've run a number of programs such as the LG Energy Solutions Battery Challenge. 6 years of this working with LG and doing pilot projects with them that's resulted in a number of investments, including a company called Liminal Insights. They used to be called Feasible, Andrew Xie, also a Cal Seed program of one of our California companies. And so there is a proven model for cross-border collaboration. It really starts with relationships and the people to venture out there first to really try to build the sort of circle of trust. Having worked in Asia for so long, it is about that guanxi that you build, those relationships, and you really need to build it. My tolerance level for Mao Tai is probably at very high now because of the number of relationships in Sichuan or Gansu or Ningxia that I've had to create and build that trust with. And so, there is the climate tech part of this, which is that there's a lot of exciting companies coming out of places like Indonesia. We actually invested in a battery swapping company called Swap Energy. They've done over 1,500 battery swapping stations. Really simple electric scooter. You take out, it's modular, you put it in the kiosk. You see that in Taiwan as well. They recently raised a Series A. We also supported another Bali electric fishing boat company. So moving from a diesel to electric fishing to support fisheries in Southeast Asia. So these are some of the innovations that are homegrown, that are locally led. They aren't sort of these big DAC plays that we see in the US and Europe, but they're helping local economies. They're creating value creation in those communities. And so I think that everything is contextual. When you talk about Asia, right? It's like you've got South Korea, you've got Japan, Southeast Asia, China. Each one of those operate in very different ways. Top down, bottom up. It's all unique in how we operate in those markets. Even within Southeast Asia, Philippines is different from Vietnam. Vietnam is different from Indonesia. Indonesia is different from Thailand, right? So I think depending on your technology, trying to figure out and identify where are the problem statements that you're trying to solve, what kind of ecosystems are out there, how do they operate, and talk to us, organizations like New Energy Nexus. We have people on the ground led by local people, local leaders that are building these relationships. And so, with that, I just want to say, yes, we are in a tough place right now, but we have to continue to push to build bridges. I mean, that is my job. I traverse between these two worlds of of the Bay Area in Shanghai. You know, I'm going back to Shanghai next week, and it's what you see there now in terms of electrification of everything is pretty astonishing. I don't know if anybody's been to Shanghai recently, but I must say, for those who haven't, you know, the perceptions of China and all that's happening, most of that will be dispelled. I personally feel, as someone who's been there and lived there for 8 years, I also have a lot of family in Taiwan as well. And so, like, there's a lot of geopolitics at play, which is important, but let's not let that be a barrier for finding ways to work with each other. As Bruce Lee likes to say, under the sun, we're all one people. So back to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think, you know, one thing this room has in common, what unites us is, you know, I think everyone here deeply care about the climate problem ahead of us. And so for me, you know, I think energy is a big part of it. But also I think people here are working on different areas and different aspects. So, you know, I think this week in general, you know, what we're hearing in Climate Week, kind of like a broken record. It's all hands on deck, you know, we got to do this quickly, we got to build more sustainably. But I think the question is how to do so. And hopefully we can do so on a global scale and across a variety of technologies that's available to all of us. But Ryoko, I would love to hear your perspective coming from a Japanese corporation, working with global innovations. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, thank you. So NECX, as I said, a venture studio, but we are based here in the Valley, and we only work with entrepreneurs, startups in the US and some in Canada, because we wanted to be independent from NEC Corporation, and we wanted to launch new business here in the US or US market. And yes, our program is for early stage, very early stage entrepreneurs. Sometimes those who are not incorporated. So we work closely with the founders from day zero to create new businesses. So they bring in their business ideas, whatever, and we select from, let's say, from 500 to 6 or 8 startups, and we run batch style cohort, and we incubate them. And in the one of the latest startup we announced publicly, it's a startup called Seafood AI. It's a sustainability marine tech startup, which I don't know if it's me. So they build a product called Crab Scan. As the name says, it's to scan the crab. It's the automation for scanning and identify, and sort the crabs they fish, people fish, which is right now manually done by fishers. So it's automation, and right now people do manually and identify manually, and then they sometimes capture those crabs, immature crabs, and then they throw them away, which is not good. But with the automated sorter, they can sort the small crabs or those who are too big, and they can just release in the sea from the ship. So for that startup, we worked from day zero, completely day zero. They didn't have any product. They just brought in the idea, and then we worked together. And then founders to engage first customers, early adopters. They went to Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam, or other countries to do customer discovery and do POC, and there are a lot of seafood industry there. So we started from there. I said we work only with US startups, but they always need to identify the low-hanging fruit. So for their case, it was Asian countries. And so they started to build the product together by engaging South Asian countries customers, and then they tested it out again and again, and we see the collaboration between US Asia. And also we involve NEC people, of course, because we are backed by NEC Corporation. And NEC also has more than 250 affiliated companies in the world, so we could leverage a lot of know-how, technology, network, even sometimes customer base from the NEC companies. So we all use we use all the resources from NEC network and customer network, and earlier this month, we published a press release about CrackScan and Secret AI, and then it's surprisingly getting traction from medias. I don't know why. We would prefer traction from customers, but we get traction from medias right now. I'm really happy with that. Anyway, but that's one of the cases we work with US startups, but we see the collaboration with Asian countries.
Thank you, Ryoko. Yeah, indeed. I think, at least from my experiences, Asian companies are quite nosy sometimes.
Yeah, right.
So something I did, and I guess trying to bridge the next discussion is, my work is really to find the best startup in technologies and find the right partner in Asia that could help them grow. Now, by growing, it doesn't just mean finding a market or introducing the right people. But for example, I invested into a green chemical company, and now they've piloted the building commercial scale facility. And I got one of the top chemical manufacturers in Taiwan to co-invest with us. And so the questions they're asking, they're discussing now is not about P&L, it's not about burn rate, but about, hey, I'm looking for this distillation reaction engineer or whatever, I don't understand what they're talking about. And it's like, do you have somebody for me? And our guys in Asia is like, yeah, I got plenty of those. I'm gonna send one over tomorrow, right? And I think these are kind of the things that I'm seeing in terms of, finding the right strategic partner, working with a startup, and kind of working along with you in different processes and trying to help you with things that you may not be so familiar with at an early stage of a company. So this is something that I've been seeing, and something that helps us kind of de-risk our investment and de-risk our portfolio as well. Now, Xiao, I know you're working with a lot of US companies as well. Certainly previous to the administration, you have a lot of partnerships in Korea and Japan. Are they looking for US technologies to kind of bolster their businesses in Japan and Korea initially? Or are they looking to kind of participate in the US market? And how would startups perhaps in the US kind of, if today they're not getting support from this particular administration, are there ways for them to kind of access different partnerships overseas as well from your experience?
I think a lot of our partners in Japan and Korea do want to participate in the US market. I think there's still a sense that a lot of the more interesting technologies are still coming out of Silicon Valley or coming out of the Boston ecosystem. It's difficult to work with them in Japan and Korea, though. Obviously, the risk tolerance is very different. The venture ecosystem is really, really different. And so it's not so that if a company isn't getting support or whatever in the United States, that there is a viable opportunity to go overseas. A lot of times that there's even fewer opportunities overseas because the overseas partners are looking for someone in the States to help them de-risk and tell them that, hey, this is actually the thing that works. And so I don't think there's a panacea there from Asia.
Absolutely. So I think, likewise, I would agree with you though, because a lot of people ask me, how has this affected kind of our work, right, in venture and in technology development? I think instead of, especially in days like today, instead of going to, say, Shenzhen before, to start a business, to find a supply chain, go to Japan and Korea, I think now you have to find the right people to work with. I think the right people, the high character people that you partner with, that could kind of take you a long way. So I think that becomes an advantage if you could work with the right people on the ground as well. But certainly, I think, Andrew, you've met a lot of people in China, in Southeast Asia. How are they able to help a lot of technologies from all over the world kind of collaborate and solve some of these climate problems?
Yeah, maybe if I can just share, I agree with you on this, I'll answer that, but I also want to share an example that I think in terms of a way for, let's say, LG or Hyundai, Kia, because they have also a major U.S. presence, they have been able to access very much, U.S. technology, bringing it back to Korea as well. So you're absolutely right, doing sort of U.S. as a pilot ground. I think Hyundai Cradle is one of the corporate venture capital arms of Hyundai. They've been able to invest in a number of companies, U.S. companies that have gone through programs of ours, and so there is definitely there is a model for that for sure. Yes, in today's environment, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but I think in terms of who your audience is and how you're telling that story to your customer, I think that's sort of an important differentiating factor. Okay, so your question on Southeast Asia and partnerships, right?
Yes.
Yeah, partnerships. Okay, so China, having worked there for the past 8 years and building out a team, what I've really noticed is that working with actually some national governments and industrial parks has been really interesting because they're sort of obviously quasi-government, but they're bringing in a lot of corporates as well. But it's really simple what they want. I call it the 3 T's: talent, tax, and technology. And so if you can somehow fit your narrative and your value proposition in those 3 T's, there is partnerships available. And right now there's a lot of industrial parks within Shanghai as well as Western China that are looking to decarbonize and have a sort of whole net zero park. There's actually quite a few of them that's already happening nowadays, particularly with a lot of battery manufacturing that's happening. 1 minute, got it. And lastly, I just want to say that there's the corporates as well. I would say corporates, at least in China, are a little bit more difficult. I think Thailand's really interesting because it is very corporate led, and if you can tie into some of the big multinational corporates within the Thailand market and working with their CVCs, I think that's really interesting. There's also a lot of philanthropy out in Indonesia that are doing feasibility tests on different technology sets. We're doing a feasibility study on a cold storage box for fisheries, and we're actually getting that data right now, supporting some local startups. So there's different partners that you could potentially work with, especially if you're earlier stage and you're looking to prove the technology. So I think it's just having an open mind and understanding who's who in that market, and finding a way to get and build a relationship with that person.
Thank you, Andrew. And Ryoko, would you like to add to specifically how Japan and NEC has perhaps supported multiple technologies, or what are you looking for, and how do you plan to help them grow into commercialization?
Yes. In terms of the partnership, even if we have a large, vast network worldwide, within NEC, what we need is local installation. So when NECX came in Silicon Valley in 2018, what we did was to partner with local accelerator. And each time we expand our target, we partnered with a couple of accelerators, VCs. And we've also partnered with Asian, for example, engineers, developers, customers. And I personally believe the partnership or local engagement is very, very important. And for the case of Seafood AI, they tapped into Southeast Asian countries, and they built their network within that local ecosystem. So creating or supporting them to create new network or engagement locally is the key. So we want to help them, whatever it is.
Thank you. I know the science is time's up, so before we go, I want to ask our panelists to give us a one-liner, if you could. Any kind of feedback, advice, suggestion to founders or portfolios for our companies who are trying to make a difference in the world.
If you want to save the environment, build something that prints cash.
Love it. Andrew?
I would say 2 messages. 1, be pragmatic. 2, if you're interested in the Asian market or in China, find me in Shanghai.
Ryoko?
So I think two things. One is local engagement, as I just said, and so prioritize local engagement and deep understanding of the global trend and regulations and I think like that. So understanding the whole picture of the market is very, very important.
Thank you. Yeah, so well, for me personally, I flew into San Francisco on Sunday and I'd be here for a week till Saturday. And the reason why I want to fly in is because we're getting a lot of mixed messages from the outside, right? People are thinking it's a lot of craziness happening, but I want to get a feel on the ground. What is the pulse on the ground? Similar to China, I think we're hearing a lot of stories about China, but unless you're in the borders, you actually have no idea what's going on inside of China. So I think it's really important for me to have a context of how people are feeling on the ground in the Bay Area in the US. And I actually come out of it very encouraged because I think people are still laser focused in solving the problem. They're optimistic, they're trying to find ways to navigate across the system, no matter what kind of industries you're in. So I'm generally excited about, resiliency of the founders that were able to work with us in San Francisco and distribute today. So I want to thank Xiao, thank Andrew, thank Ryoko. You guys are the best in the house I could imagine talking to. You have good opinions. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you very much.